Now we are talking of the United States at the time that Frederick Douglass was still a young man.
Mhm.
And you use the term split, of course, between the churches there, and of course within the society, as it were. What do you mean by split? Split in what? What were the positions that people were actually split on?
Well, the one I'm best familiar with, Baptists would do it later on, but the Methodist Episcopal Church, theirs is a very obvious one. The general, um, um, like an annual conference, national annual conference of the Methodist Church, argued that um, because slavery is a moral wrong at root, despite the fact of being legal, it's morally wrong. They argued we cannot ordain a minister who is a slaveholder. You must, if you have been a slaveholder, to be a minister, you must, or an elder, you must remove slavery from your life. You cannot be a part of that. Southerners rejected this outright. The church, literally over that core issue, split. Now the Methodists would split two more times because many in the North felt that that wasn't radical enough. The Free Methodists, for example, split in 1858 because they wanted such a hardcore anti-slavery stance that even the Methodists who had already split weren't aggressive enough on this issue. And so yeah, there are issues like anti-Mason movement. This is also a big one. That tends to be also the evangelical or really radical Christians. I use the word radical because these are those who are taking the gospel message very strong about all people are equal. And they're very aggressive about this one. And that is not a message a lot of people can really handle. We're still pretty much a society with a bit of a class consciousness. And that is, it's not going away. I mean, we don't talk about class consciousness. We don't really, use the words. But when you look at Victorian society or not Victorian, but antebellum society, you see class consciousness. You see if you're an immigrant, Irish immigrant, you see if you're Catholic, you're not one of us. You're a different class, not just religion, but class as well. So with us, class and race and ethnicity have always been wildly mixed up. And that's the world that Douglas comes into. Um, he becomes really well known, I think, by 39. Well, he begins speaking in 1839 when he meets William Lloyd Garrison of abolitionist fame, and he's kind of mentor to Douglas. And Douglas, because this is personal history. When they meet, he gets Douglas and puts him in front of an auditorium and says, "Tell me your story." You know, it's like use a modern analogy. Garrison's podcast. Put him on camera, get him to tell your story in your own words. So Douglas, by the 40s, becomes well known because here is this man who has escaped slavery, and he's self-taught. And Americans we love the self-taught idea. We are all self-made people, men and women who make themselves. We are so big about this. That is such a big popular image. It's cultic, literally. It's a cultic image in America at this time. And Douglas is hip. He's as bad as Lincoln. He's equally as bad as Lincoln in being self-made. But Douglas discovered that he's good at public speaking and he's developing skills in writing. And as a 26, 27-year-old, he goes to England. He said, "Oh, now remember, the man is not earning any income on his own now. All right. He can't work on board ship like he used to. He can't do any of the labor work. He's speaking. So he is living off fees from speaking engagements and off the abolitionist underground movement. The abolitionist has basically a whole economy underground, not traceable, because they're paying for all sorts of things that are not technically legal. So Douglas, who's still a slave, still wanted, is now in England by, I think, 46, and he becomes a hero over there. I mean, Scottish kids are singing heroic songs about him at this little kirk in Scotland, this little town in Scotland. The Irish revere him. Only some do. Some don't like him well because he's a 27-year-old. He's kind of arrogant, I suppose. He takes offense pretty easily. I think there's a lot of misunderstandings when people talk with them. They don't know each other. They're coming from different worlds, very different worlds. So misunderstandings are going to be real common. But Douglas becomes quite a hero. In fact, it's the English Abolition Society, which formally buys Douglas's freedom. I think in 48, in the late 40s, 49, something like that, they actually buy his freedom. Now they find his old master and says, look, you're not going to get him back. You know, you'll never, you want to make some money? Here it is. Free him. Give me his papers. End of discussion. You know, they're buying him off, basically. So before 1850, Douglas does become free. But things become really dodgy in 1850 with the compromise then, because it enforces a nationwide fugitive slave law with real teeth. And we've always had a fugitive slave law, but all of a sudden in 1850, 51, that fugitive slave law becomes, iron core. And so a posse from Virginia can go up to Michigan or Wisconsin, and they can draft locals to hunt down those who escaped. There will be no trial. There will be, this is basically, they identify you, they'll drag you back. If they think they identify you, they'll drag you back. You don't have another option. And so Northerners become militant, not because they're unracist, but because they really don't like people telling them what to do.
All right.
That's the world he comes in.
Thank you so much for that. So you did make mention of one individual who sort of mentored him.
Yeah.
I think that is what we want to spend some time here, because we are not born with all the characteristics. Sometimes we do have some of the characteristics, but until we form them, they cannot help us. Now we see that Frederick Douglass is able to make his way, not because somebody was actually putting money on him, but because he was able to speak. His ability to speak is now making way for him.
Yep.
Which means somebody have helped him to either find this gift inside of him or help him to develop it. So who are these influencers that are helping to find his way, that sort of influence him? Yeah, let me put it that way.
All right. Several. Of course, Garrison, who is a renowned abolitionist. Now, by 1850, he and Garrison will have a really ugly falling out, and they will never even talk to one another again. But Garrison shows him the way and sets him up on stage. Garrison is his manager, so to speak. So Garrison's big, and Garrison is a public speaker. He's a bit of a radical, but Douglas also comes out of the Black church. And so Douglas also has that influence. Preachers who read the King James Bible. Now, Lincoln's big in this one, and you have to remember, this is an influence. It's maybe not one person, it's multiple people, but it's the language, the analogies, the metaphors in particularly the Old Testament of the King James Bible that are going to be very, very influential. You're going to hear or read Douglas's comments in almost every speech or every writing, every book he puts out. You're going to see references to a prophecy, to the King James, to the book of Exodus, to something in the King James Bible. That particular language, even the pacing of how he says things, is going to be from that. And then there's a woman called Julia Griffith. I'm saying her name right. Julia is an English activist herself, abolitionist. I don't know her age necessarily, but she's probably about Douglas's age. But she is also a very well-educated woman, and she actually, while in England, joins up with Douglas's group, and she comes back to the United States. Now, she is the editor. Now, if you've ever written something, if you have an editor who works with you, like my wife has edited some of my things, and her favorite phrase is, "Are you sure you wanted to say it this way?" Are you really sure? Because here's what it sounds like, And so, oh yeah, that sounds kind of crappy, doesn't it? Yeah. So she did that for Douglas. Now she is a master of English language. So she understands grammar and construction, connotation versus direct language. She understands these things.